Folks, do you like factions that have a little bit different flavor? Well, then you're in a good place today at the Battle of the Pyramids here. Massilia is taking on Saba. Now, I don't know what brought them together at the pyramids, but I'm happy for it nonetheless. This is a pretty map that we get going on here, nice desert aesthetic. We actually have seen Saba multiple times recently, which is cool. And I know a lot of people in the comments have talked about how the desert factions were fairly strong. There was a bit of power creep late into the game. So there's definitely a fair number of people who don't mind playing the desert factions, but I know for a long time we just weren't used to them. Obviously they weren't in Rome 2 until later on, but I think we all kind of just got the barbarian burnout, so to speak. But here we go. There's going to be 5 slingers up front for Saba. These are just relatively cheap slingers. There are going to be some mercenary Mosquet Marauders here. Looks like 4 units of those, and these are pretty good axemen. They're going to be probably... they're going to be trading blows on stats with like something like a Cartley Axeman in terms of just different stats. We've got a Sabaean Camel Cataphract. It looks like 3 of those, no 4 moving forward. And then a Marib Camel Cataphract for the general. So that is a very heavy camel line. And then let's see what else we got. Some Noble Swords and Sabaean Spearmen. All right, let's go check out the Massilian line. Up front for them are Celtic Slingers, which are going to be similar to their Sabaean counterparts in terms of stats, unless there's hidden shield values or something that I don't recall at the moment. 5 of them up front, and 2 Levy Freemen right behind them, and then a line of Massilian Hoplites. Now, a couple things to remember about Massilian Hoplites: a decent charge bonus, not as good as the Armored Desert ones, but decent still. They still do have the 30 attack spear here, which is going to be more AP. And then they have 90 armor, which again, is still pretty heavy. So it looks like I can see 7, I believe, of the Massilian Hoplites. So that is a huge line of them. And then there's a couple of Thorax Swords in the back. A Massilian Cavalry, which is kind of a medium melee cavalry. Looks like I see 3 of those in total. So the cavalry advantage ought to be heavily in favor of Saba, who's using this Arabian cavalry to do a little bit of, what do you call it, bait and switch, cat and mouse, whatever you want to call it, type tactics here, just kind of threatening the Celtic slingers. I would imagine we're going to see a bit of skirmish play here. Depending on how hard Saba wants to push that, Saba should be able to cause a lot of problems in the skirmish, though we do have here these Massilia. Sorry, that is weird. It looked like a cavalry unit that had the missile banner. The Massilian cavalry is going to be right up here with the skirmishers. Good and bad, right? When your units are up with the skirmishers protecting them, the good side is that they can be protected. The bad side is that they're also going to take inadvertent slinger fire. And it looks like here the Massilian cavalry is going to intercept the Arabian cavalry. All of this shenaniganry should allow the Sabaean slingers to get a pretty decent start in this fight. But see, like for instance, this Massilian cavalry will take slinger fire, assuming that the slinger here is being targeted. They're now going to do a little bit of charging and baiting here as well. So it looks like 1 slinger from Massilia did take some hit there, but the Arabian cavalry is going to be shut down. However, I believe all of the slinger fire coming into these Massilian cavalry will still pay off. Nice feint here. Look at that, pulling the camels out. What I'd love to see when the camels get pulled out here is a counter by several slingers targeting them and chipping away at their hit points. And you can see here that now that they've been brought closer to the line, they'll be engaged, and then here comes a Levy Freeman. But look at that, the camel just plowing right through that lower mass cavalry and hitting the slingers and getting a whole bunch of damage done. In the meantime, that Levy Freeman charging out. I haven't seen him toss a javelin yet, surprisingly. That was not bad, really, for the camels in the end. They took out a cavalry unit, damaged the slingers, and got away clean from the Levy Freeman. That was, I mean, they took some losses. It wasn't totally free, but I feel like that is an acceptable loss type scenario. So to me, it feels like Saba is getting the better of this initial skirmish. But let's take a look. There's 1 slinger unit here already wavering. Another one's having to reposition, so Massilia may not be out of the skirmishing game here, despite the interesting trades here so far. Here comes another Massilian cavalry, showing YOLO against this right flank, but now pulling off of it, not surprisingly, because the Camel Cataphracts were there to help ward that off. But the trade of fire continues, and it looks like the Massilian cavalry is the one being targeted by some of these slingers here. Interesting target. Whereas it looks like the Massilians' Celtic slingers are definitely squarely focused on the Sabaean slingers, and multiple units of Sabaean slingers feeling the heat, but I mean, it hasn't been a perfect engagement for the Celtic slingers either. They've taken some heat. So, again, probably a relatively even trade so far, but Massilia is down some cavalry. They've still got 2 units. They do have the 1 skirmisher cavalry back here. I got confused with my banners earlier on the other side, but this is not a confusion. So this is an actual skirmisher cavalry. That could be really good if it's saved and used well against camel cataphract units, because of course the javelins are going to be devastating. So it does look like Massilia is going to clean up the skirmish here. That should force an engagement out of Saba. That's not really the best world for Saba here, having to charge forward. However, again, they do have the cavalry support to potentially manage this. If they can kind of make a line for their Musket Marauders and then follow it up with their noble swords in the back, they certainly have a chance at going after the Massilian hoplites. The axemen should do well against armor. The question is whether they can hold out, in that fight, and I'm not familiar enough with that unit to make any prediction to that extent. There are still a few units of slingers here, though, so Saba may decide to hang up and trade skirmish fire a little longer. However, again, to me, it looks like the Massilians have kind of gained the advantage here. Ooh, yeah, look, Marauder's already taken slinger fire here, so it's probably going to force some action. And let's see exactly how that goes down, because I do expect to see some very dangerous shock cavalry charges here. Now, Massilian hoplites don't have javelins. If they are standing still like this, they will brace against the charge of any oncoming cavalry, so it makes them somewhat safe. These are spread into, it looks like, 5 ranks deep here. They should be able to resist a charge to a decent degree. Remember, any unit with javelins will not brace when it's on fire at will, even if it's standing still. I believe fire at will has to be deactivated. If we look here, so see, like, that hoplite did brace for that charge. They are going to take some losses on the charge, but it will be considerably less than under normal circumstances. Hoplites do have a bonus versus large, but their relatively low attack stats are going to make them, less than perfect at this. I like, though, how the hoplite was weakened and then engaged with the Sabaean sword unit here. That's definitely going to need to continue to be the case, and then it looks like there's going to be a cycle charge. The slingers are really working on the camel cataphracts here, and I think that's a good call. There's another camel cataphract that busted through, and it's being supported by a Musket Marauder, and it looks like Saba really working this single flank here at the moment. These Sabaean swordsmen standing by, mercenary. I'm just checking the infantry units to see if they're taking sling fire. I don't see any yet. This Massilian hoplite is dropping to the Sabaean swords and the repeated charge of the Marib super heavy shock cavalry, I might add. So not just heavy, but super heavy. Alright, we're going to see them continue to maneuver, and it looks like, ooh, another cycle charge there. Last second trample charge activated. This is pulling some units away from the front line for Massilia. Let's see whether Saba's able to take advantage of it. This camel cataphract sitting here eating slinger fire, so that is excellent for Massilia. Over here, it looks like there's skirmisher cavalry working down another Sabaean camel cataphract, so again, not bad at all for Massilia. If they kind of play this game, I feel like Massilia will grind this out better. I think that from the Sabaeans, we needed to see probably a mass camel cataphract charge, weakening a whole bunch of these hoplites and then taking the engagement to them. I think sitting back like this and working this one flank probably won't work to the advantage of the Sabaeans, because it's going to allow their cavalry to be picked at by the slingers and weakened. Whereas I think one, kind of decisive engagement may have worked better. And then you just kind of continually cycle charge the cavalry and weakening that line of Massilian hoplites, trying to break it down and tear it apart. The Massilian general is dead. Some of these units, though, have the discipline trait where it will minimize the penalty that they take. This Massilian hoplite's now engaging the Sabaean swords after they successfully defeated one unit. They probably won't be able to defeat 2. Looks like the swordsmen stopping to throw their javelins. I thought there was more Musket Marauders here, so I was incorrect. There are a number of units of them, but not all of them. We even have a noble sword unit here, which is looking fairly potent, albeit a little low on armor. So we're finally seeing the camel cataphracts get to the slingers. This is definitely something that the Sabaeans need to do. We had a Camel Cataphract charge to weaken that Massilian Hoplite that did significantly weaken it. And it looks like that unit's trying to continue on to support other infantry. We'll just kind of keep an eye on all this. A little bit of a messy battle here, and there's still some slingers on this flank for the Sabaeans. Their general unit has gotten a lot of kills. It's starting to take some damage, but it's caused a healthy amount of damage as well. We've got a Massilian Hoplite unit here wavering in the face of those Sabaean swords. And we've got some noble swords coming up to reinforce this position against the thorax swords. Those Moscat Marauders off to a pretty good start here, already 40 kills. And there comes the noble swords charging in. I think they should do well against the Hoplites. They don't have as much AP as the Marauder, but they should be a nice stable unit. We're seeing some leadership issues though for Saba. I think their general just bought the farm and routed. So that is going to hurt. It says attacked in the rear there too. I think it's this other Hoplite unit touching them. Show us where they touched you. Sorry, couldn't help it. But in any case, we're going to see the Massilian line is really starting to crumble. Like both factions here without their leader, and it's making leadership morale, I guess is the name of it in this game. It's making morale kind of off and on depending on the situation for both players here. The morale was hit and miss. Here comes a Moscat Marauder getting a really nice charge. It should get a lot of kills on that charge, ripping through the armor of those Massilian Hoplites. Yeah, it got almost 20 kills right off the charge, but we're going to see a Hoplite wall coming. I don't know, Saba appears to be in pretty good shape to me. I don't know if Massilia can really pull this one back, but it really depends on the leadership for Saba too. I mean, leadership is kind of on the ropes for both factions, honestly. It looks okay for Saba, but again, the leadership in these situations I feel like can change rather quickly. There is still a Camel Cataphract over here. That's a dangerous unit. There's still a number of these hardy Massilian Hoplites left. So again, I think a lot of this is going to come down to morale here for these two. I mean, because all these Massilian Hoplites, it's a lot of armor, and they can certainly grind something out. Yeah, I mean, look at this here. We're starting to see leadership really wavering for these. The Marauders stabilized. Camel Cataphract getting a quick charge there on the Massilian Hoplites. It's going to activate another trample charge. This is going to be close. In fact, I feel like this is going to be real close. Nice rear charge here. They need to hurt the morale of these Marauders. I like that the thorax swords are taking on the Marauders there. They should do pretty good with their increased melee attack. Another cycle charge from the Camel Cataphracts, trying to get as many kills as they can. This Hoplite is holding out about as best as can be expected, honestly. It's got 80 some odd kills. Pretty impressive so far. This Marauder is definitely working these Hoplites over time. They've got really good attack, good armor piercing. They don't have a ton of damage, but it's almost all armor piercing. The Slinger can perform a rear attack here that may prove decisive against these swordsmen. They are losing slightly in combat, so this rear charge definitely should take... No, they turned around and charged the Slinger, but then they're going to be attacked in the rear regardless. I'm not sure if I'd want to turn my back to those Massilian Hoplites. We'll see what happens. They're in a Hoplite wall, though, so they're going to be a bit defensive. And it looks like the Moscat Marauders are going to try and cycle charge here. I like that call, and it's going to be a frenzied charge at that. I don't know how well it's going to connect. They didn't get a whole lot of distance between themselves in that unit. We've still got a Camel Cataphract at 11, 10 entities, 9, dropping quickly, but it was doing some charges there. Let's see whether that charge kind of re-energized these Marauders into finishing this fight, and they're doing okay, but they're not finishing it as quickly as they need to. It looks like the Swordsman trying to do another cycle charge, but it's actually the Hoplites who are going to get the charge here, and the Swordsmen get caught standing still. So that is not going to work out well for those Swordsmen, because those Hoplites did get a proper charge. This has looked very close. I feel like Massilia is kind of turning the tide here, and I think they're going to take it after a very close fight. It was an interesting matchup, infantry-wise, because both factions had some pretty good niche units. Massilian Hoplites are a pretty good niche infantry pick. And then so are the marauders and the swordsmen that we saw from Saba, depending on the situation. All that heavy cavalry, very tough. Some of them definitely got a lot of damage done. That is a noble sword. We'll see how their leadership holds up. They're certainly way outnumbered, so I just don't see Saba turning this one around, and they don't. So it was a costly victory, Pyrrhic victory for Massilia even. And boy, it was a close one. Look at these camel cataphracts here, picked up 233. The Marib camel general picked up a lot of kills, 111 here. So the shock cavalry got some work done. There was 2 of those units that were somewhat nullified by the slinger fire of Massilia and the other tools that they had at their disposal, like these skirmisher cavalry. And then as infantry-wise, you can see there was a lot of trading going on infantry-wise. Some units for Saba did good, some units for Massilia did good. So there's definitely some interesting trades going on there. Very close battle. I appreciate Hotel Soap and Timberlane for playing this one. Man, these were fun. So definitely appreciate the faction matchup and the fun match we got to see here. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. See y'all soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.